I have to tell you about one of the most heartbreaking characters in gaming. Like, you think you know him, but when you dig into his backstory, you realize it's even sadder than you thought. Now, if you've played the game, you already know Arthur as a gruff, sarcastic cowboy with the gravelly voice and the constant "I don't know about this Dutch" attitude. But Arthur wasn't always that hardened outlaw. He was once a kid, a son, a lover, a father, and all of that, the good and the bad, made him into the man we meet at the start of Red Dead Redemption 2. So sit back and relax, because we're going to dive into the tragic origin story of Arthur Morgan, and trust me, this one's gonna stick with you. Born in 1863, and right from the start, life did him dirty. His mother, she died when he was just a boy. His father, Lyle Morgan, and let me tell you, Lyle wasn't winning any Dad of the Year awards. Lyle was a petty criminal, always in trouble, in and out of jail. Arthur barely knew him, and honestly, that might have been for the best. The only thing Arthur really inherited from his dad was his outlaw life. When Arthur was just 14 years old, Lyle died. Arthur didn't have brothers, didn't have sisters, didn't have grandparents swooping in to raise him. He had nothing. He was just a teenager alone in the world. But then, fate intervened. One day, Arthur crossed paths with two men that would change his life forever: Dutch Vanderland and Jose Matthews. Now, Dutch and Jose weren't just random drifters. They were outlaws, sure, but they had style. They had charm. They had this philosophy, this whole "we live free, we live outside the rules of society" thing going on. And Dutch? Oh, Dutch saw something in Arthur right away. He looked at his scrappy young teenager with nothing and thought, this one's mine. This one's got potential. So, Dutch basically adopts Arthur, raises him like a son, teaches him how to ride, shoot, how to think like an outlaw. Jose? He becomes like an uncle, smart, wise, always balancing out Dutch's big speeches with some good old-fashioned common sense. Arthur finally has something he's never had before: a family. And let me tell you, he bought into Dutch's dream completely. If Dutch said jump, Arthur didn't even ask how high. He just jumped. Now, this wasn't some peaceful family picnic situation. The Vanderland gang was out robbing, scheming, and living outside the law, but for Arthur, it was home. By his late teens, Arthur was already Dutch's most trusted gun. If Dutch was the brain, Arthur was the muscle. He became his feared enforcer, the kind of guy you didn't want to see riding up on his horse. But Arthur wasn't just brawn. He was smart too. He learned to track, hunt, and negotiate. He was basically Dutch's protege. And Dutch loved him for it. Sometimes it even felt like Arthur was the son Dutch wished he had. But here's where Arthur's story takes a turn. Because even though he was living this outlaw life, there were moments where he had tried to have something more. Mary was different. She wasn't an outlaw. She wasn't part of the gang. She was a girl from a respectable family. And somehow, she and Arthur fell in love. Now, for a while it was sweet. Arthur was rough around the edges, sure, but with Mary, he was softer. She saw something in him beyond the gun and the outlaw reputation, and Arthur, he wanted to be that man for her. At one point, they were even engaged. Can you imagine Arthur Morgan, this tough cowboy, planning a wedding? But here's the catch. Mary's family, they looked at Arthur and saw nothing but a criminal, a man with no future, a man who would drag Mary down with him. And eventually, the pressure got to be too much. Mary broke off the engagement. Arthur never recovered from that. You can actually feel it in Red Dead Redemption 2. When he shows up again, that pain, that what if, it's still there. Years later, Mary represented the life Arthur could have had, a life of peace, of love, of maybe even redemption. And he lost it. Now, this part of Arthur's past isn't well known, but it's honestly the most heartbreaking. Arthur had a son. His name was Isaac. He had Isaac with a waitress he had a relationship with for a while. And unlike most outlaws, Arthur didn't just disappear on them. He actually tried to be there. He visited when he could, brought money when he could, even though he was still running with Dutch's gang. For a man like Arthur, that was huge. It showed that deep down, he wanted to be better than his father had been. But tragedy struck again. Isaac and his mother were murdered by robbers. Just gone. And after that, Arthur built this wall around himself. He became colder, tougher, but at the same time, you see little glimpses of the man he could have been. Like with John Marston's son, Jack. Arthur cares for Jack in a way that feels like he's trying to make up for the son he lost. It's subtle, but it's there. So by the time we meet Arthur at the start of Red Dead Redemption 2, it's 1899. He's about 36 years old. Dutch's gang is on the run after a job goes wrong, and Arthur is still right there at Dutch's side. You can tell Arthur's not the same kid who bought into Dutch's dreams all those years ago. He's older now, wiser, tired. And Dutch? Dutch isn't the same either. He's slipping. His big ideas are turning into paranoia and desperation. Arthur starts to see through the cracks. He starts to wonder if Dutch's dreams of freedom were ever real, or if it was all just a pretty lie. But even then, Arthur's loyalty is strong, because Dutch isn't just his leader. He's the man who raised him, and letting go of that isn't easy. It's like trying to walk away from your own father, even when you know he's wrong. And this is why Arthur Morgan is one of the best written characters in gaming. He's not just a cowboy with a gun. He's a man shaped by loss, by loyalty, and by heartbreak. He lost his parents. He lost the woman he loved. He lost his son. And every time, instead of turning away from the outlaw life, he doubled down on it, because that was the only family he had left. But deep down, Arthur wasn't a bad man. He was a man who wanted to be good, but never quite got the chance. And that's the tragedy of his origin story. It's not just about becoming an outlaw. It's about all the ways life kept pushing him down. until the only path he saw left was the one Dutch put in front of him. So, the next time you're riding with Arthur in Red Dead Redemption 2, or you hear him mumbling something sarcastic under his breath, remember where he came from. He wasn't just born an outlaw. He was a kid who lost everything, who found a family in Dutch and Jose, who tried to love, who tried to be a father, who tried to be better. And maybe, in the end, that's why his story hits so hard. Because Arthur Morgan isn't just a character. He feels real. He feels like a man who could have been sitting across from you at a campfire, telling you about the life he lived and the mistakes he made. And that is what makes his origin so unforgettable.